To me, activism is the lifeblood of democracy. It's a way in which the people express their feelings and desires. It's a way in which governments and other institutions are held to account. Without activism, democracy is a shadow of itself. Democracy is about much more than simply voting once every 5 years. It's also about holding those in power, in government, to account in between elections. In my half a century of activism, it is really hard to single out any particular form of activism that I've done above others. Standout ones are the 2 attempted citizens arrest of President Mugabe of Zimbabwe on charge of torture and other human rights abuses, the outing of 10 Anglican bishops, where we called upon them to tell the truth and highlighted the fact that they were allied to a church that was deeply homophobic. Plus, of course, the invasion of Canterbury Cathedral in 1998, where we peacefully and quietly went into the pulpit of the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. George Carey, and called out his support for legal discrimination against LGBT people. Those are just 3 out of many, many, in fact, out of over 3,000 direct action protests that I've done since the late 1960s. Neither myself nor Outrage outed anyone because they were gay and in the closet. We were targeting public figures only, not private citizens, and we were targeting them because they were being homophobic and hypocritical. They were anti-gay in public, but gay in private. And we believed that that hypocrisy needed to be called out, and we did it in the ethical name of defending the LGBT community against people who were causing our community harm. The London Gay Liberation Front in the early 1970s was probably the most exciting political period of my life, in terms of the fact that we were challenging the homophobic orthodoxy of centuries. Our slogan, "Gay is good," turned on its head the everyday assumption that gay was bad, mad, and sinful. We were not merely seeking equality. In fact, equality hardly ever passed our lips. We were striving for the transformation of society to ensure sexual choice and freedom for everyone, straight, bisexual, gay, and trans. Outrage in the 1990s was in many ways a continuing, updated version of the Gay Liberation Front. It was a very critical, skeptical movement, which didn't just accept the status quo, but like the Gay Liberation Front, sought to change it. We sought to build alliances and coalitions with other communities and minorities for our common welfare and liberation. Much of the initial impetus of Outrage came from our fury at the way the police were cracking down on consensual, victimless, adult same-sex behavior. We were also enraged by the fact that police were doing so little to tackle the wave of homophobic murders and assaults. Gay men were being killed, yet the police were often treating their murders with a very light touch. There were no major investigations. The police seemed to take the view, you lot are criminals, you don't deserve the protection of the law. Most people tend to stick to parliamentary lobbying or extra-parliamentary protest. I've done both, and I think there's a role for both. I think Parliament is important and can be a vehicle, an instrument for effective social change, but often when Parliament won't listen, then people have to organise outside of Parliament to challenge, protest, and demand social change. And if you look throughout history, you'll find that nearly all the major social reforms that Parliament eventually legislated began outside of Parliament through social movements, including the Chartists and the suffragettes in their struggles respectively for the votes of working class men and the votes for women. The LGBT movement in Britain has made great strides. We have repealed all the major anti-gay laws. There are still issues, however, like homophobic bullying and hate crime, like the often appalling treatment of LGBT refugees fleeing persecution in other countries, and the failure of sex and relationship education in schools to address LGBT issues. Looking at the global picture, however, things are much more grim. There has been progress there as well, but still nearly 80 countries criminalize same-sex relations, with penalties ranging up to life imprisonment and even the death penalty. Most LGBT people in the world do not have equal rights or protection against discrimination. So as much as we can celebrate the huge positive gains we've made in the UK, let's never forget our LGBT brothers and sisters in other countries around the world who are still battling very long and very hard for the freedoms that we have already won. My campaigning is motivated by a very simple idea: love. I love other people. I wouldn't want to be done to me the injustices that are often done to others. So therefore, I feel a duty and responsibility to do what I can, however flawed and imperfect, to help people who are being victimized and who are suffering. That, to me, is just a basic, fundamental human empathy for others. I love other people. I love freedom, justice, and equality. To me, all of the issues were important in their own way, and for me, it was never about me alone doing these things. I was always working together with others. I was part of a collective effort, and it is obvious throughout history that it is our collective efforts that bring about change. Particular individuals can make an impact, but at the end of the day, real effective social change is about the organization of masses of individuals into collective action, because that way we are stronger.